Wow. And live. Oh, Nicola and Robert, we did it. How is that after 20 years that I do interview, every time that there is a connection and technology involved, it never works everything perfectly, the first time. I don't know. Maybe I'm just unlucky, or it's just technology, maybe.
I think, the fun about the world today is that we think that we're living in the most advanced time, but when you start to push all the buttons, it doesn't always work, and you go back to the old ways.
It is. I recently launched my NFT collection, and I was talking with the dev. Everything fine, perfect. How is the test? Perfect. API, perfect. Everything good. And every time he said perfect, I thought, oh gosh, that doesn't feel good. And then we arrived at the day of the minting, and the API from OpenSea, they completely crashed. So they had to do manually all the things. And I said, is it perfect now? No. So, but that's, how technology is, like you keep trying, testing. It's a very complex mechanism. And all of this Web3 world is very complex. So I was curious to understand more about Gucci approach in this world. And first of all, maybe I start with Nicola. For people that are not familiar with your job, what do you do exactly in Gucci?
So I joined Gucci 7 years ago when we started a new chapter with the new CEO and creative director, and I started working as head of strategy and right hand of the CEO. Then I moved to digital. I led the global digital business of Gucci for 3 years, and a year and a half ago we decided as a company to create a new division called New Businesses, formally and informally Dream Big. That is meant to create new businesses for Gucci at the frontier between tech and fashion. So I'm leading this division, and obviously all our streams in gaming and metaverse are part of it, as well as our new online concept store, Gucci Vault.
Fantastic. And same for you, Robert, so that we have the context exactly.
Sure. So I joined Gucci actually 14 years ago,
Wow.
but in this particular chapter, which, as Nicola said, began about 7 years ago, I am looking after kind of the storytelling around the brand, working very closely with Alessandro, our esteemed creative director, and then across all the client touch points. So digital, traditional, really to try to make sure that this brand can deepen its engagement with our community. Got it.
And you immediately touch one of the keyword of Web3, which is community. And I was chatting before with Nicola, and I thought, wow, is fantastic on one side, and on the other side is such an effort because they never sleep. On Discord, they are always active and chatting, asking, requesting, and you think, wow, is great, but there is a huge amount of effort there. And if you're not committed as a personal brand or a brand, it is very, very tricky, I think, to enter. So I was curious to step back a second. And when Gucci decided to go into this Web3 world, and then we'll try to unpack every pieces of this Web3 world, I was curious to understand what was the philosophy behind, because it's a very difficult also world to start, where you start from. So maybe I start with Nicola from, let's say, the tech, digital vision perspective, and then I come to the storytelling side.
Yeah, well, Gucci, has always been at the forefront in digital. Back 15 years ago, we were probably the first brand opening its own e-commerce website. We kept really being digital first as a brand since Marco joined, and experimenting constantly. And here, this new chapter, I would say we started from gaming. We were very, very advanced in gaming already, with a team working on the right way to position the brand in games. We worked, as you know, we did a crazy exhibition with Roblox 6 months ago, where we had 20 million visitors in 2 weeks. We worked with Pokemon Go. We worked with Tennis Clash. We worked with The Sims. And progressively, this evolved into NFT. So more or less a year ago, the concept of NFT really exploded. So we were looking at that. We found it extremely interesting, the concept of digital collectible, and also beyond this, the fact that NFTs are about community, scarcity and creativity. And this is what is core to a brand like Gucci. So we started with a first NFT that we issued in spring last year that was a digital artwork around Aria, our fashion show last year, that we sold on Christie's. It was the first, I think, NFT in the luxury world. And we started trying to understand a bit more what was happening. And from there, we decided naturally to open a Discord account and to explore further. We don't know where this is going. What we know is that as Gucci, we want to be testing and learning. The only way to know is to test rather than waiting and seeing. We want to shape the direction. So this is why we are very much taking experimental steps. So it started with Discord, that, as you say, is something completely new as a social media. We manage social media very well, but Discord is a completely new kind with a much more active community. We dropped a second NFT in February with Super Plastic, a collab with this LA brand. And now we have just this project that was just announced with Wagmi-san, the tailor of the metaverse. But it's a very much step-by-step testing and learning approach, trying to understand what are the kind of projects that are really relevant to a brand like us. That's where we start from, authentic, engaging with the community as well and learning from our first steps and moving in this direction, again, around scarcity, community, creativity. That for us is the basis.
Got it. Robert, there is a lot of skepticism around those topics. So for instance, in the gaming industry, you have some big players that first announced, yeah, we're going to do some NFTs. Then the community didn't react very well. So they say, no, sorry, we are joking. We will not do it. And I would say majority of companies are a bit scared. Probably they don't know exactly what to do. So from a marketing perspective and a storytelling perspective, it's not an easy job. I was curious to understand how did you approach it at the beginning, and what's your take on this challenge?
So I think it's perhaps worth going back to the beginning of this chapter 7 years ago, when Gucci really under, again, Marco Bizzarri and Alessandro Michele's vision became quite disruptive to itself and to the industry, because luxury and fashion luxury had always been defined in a way by this kind of exclusive, at a distance ambience and this kind of feeling. And back in 2015, we kind of turned the tables on that, and we said, today, with social media, with the way that communities are engaging and building around issues and around values, this actually could be a great moment where the notion of co-creativity could be very powerful. So again, disrupting the industry, we began to create these collaborations. And I think that they inspired the community around the brand, and the values that Nicolas was referring to in terms of authenticity, innovation, and disruption became kind of the symbols of Gucci. So when we began to think about NFTs, for example, or the metaverse, for us it was very natural to look at this as an opportunity, but always to engage with the community in an authentic way. And as Nicolas said, whilst I don't think anyone in this community can really predict what is going to happen, even in a month's time, let alone a year or 2 years' time, for us, the most important thing is that we approach it with authenticity, with the values that are important to us as a brand and to our community. So again, if you look at the way that we've approached entering into the gaming world, entering into the NFT world, we have always tried to do it with respect for the community, engaging individuals who are a fundamental part of that community to help us understand how to go about doing it in the most appropriate and the most respectful way. So I think that is, if you look back at all of the collaborations that Nicolas mentioned, that has been a defining factor for us.
And I think what you were saying, that the approach is that authenticity comes before perfection, because we cannot be perfect in this world. We are all learning. But if you are authentic and true to the community, then it's very well understood the way you enter.
Yeah, definitely. For a second, I was thinking that I would love to do Robert's job for a second. Not the tough part, you know, but when you call and say, hey, is Robert Gucci, we would like to have a collaboration with you. And everyone say yes. Everyone say, yes, please, let's schedule a call. That has to be a fantastic feeling. Let's be honest about it.
Well, look, what I would say is that the beautiful thing about when you become kind of inclusive in your approach and you kind of welcome the idea of co-creativity is that you get wonderful encounters, serendipitous encounters. And I think what's really interesting if we look at the journey that we're on with the metaverse is that it is truly organic. I mean, when you are on Discord, as you were just saying, this is kind of a living organism.
Yeah.
And seeing that, as it were, iterate around creativity, around ideas, it's a beautiful thing to watch, to be honest.
How do you keep that's the challenge that's the part of your job that I wouldn't like to do because I find it very difficult. How do you keep a brand like Gucci, I wouldn't say exclusive, but like top Gucci is a top brand, is like is perceived like, you know, Gucci. And sometimes when you associate a brand like that to new technologies that are still evolving and they feel a bit cheap. I don't know if it's the right word in English, but they don't feel really like exclusive or luxe. You know, they feel like not great. How do you make it in a way that you preserve the brand, but you also start to test the technology?
I mean, I'll give you an answer from a kind of brand positioning standpoint, and then maybe Nicola can build on that. I think that everything that we do as a brand is highly curated. It's. I mean, we clearly want to make sure that the brand is, when you engage with this brand, you experience what you anticipate you should experience with this brand. So the notion of that qualitative experience is underlying everything that we do. Even if we're trying a new platform, we will always look at how we can approach that new platform, even if it's an experiment, in a way that truly mirrors the values, the aesthetic, and the curation that you would expect from Gucci. So let me say that everything that we do in every way is highly, highly curated.
Right. How do you see this one, Nicola? Because some platforms, like, I mean, I'm thinking Discord, I'm thinking, you know, platforms that are just born, basically, they don't look very curated, you know, or maybe some gaming experience. So sometimes maybe there is the risk that you think, wow, this is Gucci, but I don't know. But on the other side is also what I think what gives a brand a new, fresh look. You start to have a conversation with the different target that maybe start to appreciate the brand, a younger audience. I mean, there are a lot of benefits, but a lot of stuff to deal with, I imagine.
But well, you know, we obviously, when we enter a new platform, we carefully evaluate if it's the right place for us to be, and in case there is a gray area, we have a discussion to make sure that the environment is appropriate. That does not mean that it has to be luxurious, but it has to be appropriate in a way or another. Then
right.
What we really try to differentiate is the way we do things. That being a brand, when in the case of a brand entering a platform where there are no other brands, we want to make sure that we do things differently and we explain our positioning. Then this being said, I would also just insist on the fact that there are many, many things that you can do that are incredible. When you see Gucci Garden on Roblox, the kind of immersion that you can create in the brand when you visit the exhibition during 20 minutes is much, much richer than you can do with many other media. So it's not, I think, black and white. There are also a lot of possibilities that we exploit. And then the last thing I would say is that we make sure that in whatever we bring and propose to the consumers, we bring value that is creative, that is relevant, So we are not going, certainly not going for easy profits or easy win. We want to make sure that whatever we bring in the market, we are going to bring something as Gucci that is true to Gucci and differentiated.
Right, got it. Help my audience to understand what's the, in your vision, what's the priority there? If you've been talking about gaming, metaverse, NFT, there is like a sort of different priority, or they are all on the same level and you just try to experiment and see how it goes? What's your vision there about all of these Web3? And then, because I was thinking Gucci could do, I mean, you can launch your own token. You can create, I don't know, a DeFi platform for fashion. I mean, you can do everything, but you have to decide what is right and what is wrong, and what's the priority there.
Yeah, and I absolutely, I think those different domains, gaming, NFT, etc., they are for us at an equal level of priority, and the prioritization comes more into what we do inside each of them, right? And they are probably, by the way, components of the so-called metaverse, because at the end, the metaverse is probably the convergence of immersive experience like Roblox and adding an NFT layer to it, and all these combined is going to become the metaverse. So we really see them as building blocks. On the gaming side, we have three pillars that is more mature and more established already. We have three pillars, I would say. One is really create and represent and position the brand in some games or platforms in order to let people discover the brand and engage with the brand in a different way. Very much always around self-expression. That is our mantra. So that's one pillar. The second one is partnering with esports team. We are either partner or good friends with 100 Thieves in the US, with Fnatic in the UK, and with T1 in Korea for the value they represent and for the community they represent. And the third pillar that is new is we are now launching a partnership with Faceit, that is a big online gaming platform, to work with them on a kind of academy to support players in becoming professional. So that's the gaming part. I would say the Web3 part is much more experimental for the moment, and we take steps one by one, starting from creating a Discord, Gucci Vault. I encourage everybody to join us to see what we are doing, where it's really the starting point to engage with the communities, and then shaping projects for the moment with partners like Super Plastic or like 10KTF in this moment, and then potentially very much ourselves as soon as the technology will enable it. But it's very much more step by step rather than a long-term plan that we have already.
I was curious. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think that if you go back, as Nicola said, I mean, Gucci was one of the first brands, if not the first in the luxury space to launch e-commerce. At the time, there was great cynicism about whether you could actually offer a luxury experience online. And of course, history has proven that you absolutely can. And over the last 20 years, if we think, because it's been a progressive kind of digital revolution, we think about social media at the same time. There was the question, can luxury brands have social media platforms? Then there was AR. Can luxury brands embrace what AR has to offer? And I think as every one of these new technical innovations has come along, technological innovations has come along, I think we've seen that if you embrace them, if you test and learn, you can find, because it's the future. And the moment you kind of try to shut the door on the future, you probably fail. So I think as long as you can understand as you test and learn how they can be applied to your experience in an appropriate way, it's actually very liberating along the way. And you really engage with your community in ways, particularly as a brand, that intersects with how culture is changing and evolving as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was chatting the other day, I don't remember with who about this topic, and he was saying that, yeah, comic books, for instance, for us, they were very important. I was reading Spider-Man when I was, I don't know, 10 years old. And now maybe you start from NFTs, and a new movie will be made out of an NFT collection, because there is where maybe culture moved and your cultural references. So it's changing a lot. I was curious to understand how is this, let's say, Gucci Web3 unit is structured, is organized. How many people are there? I don't know if it's a public data this one, but just to understand, help my audience to understand how a company like Gucci say, okay, we're going to do this, but how do we organize to achieve good results?
Well, it's actually not specific to Web3, it's specific to this new division that I created, where we were asking ourselves, how is it that you create a division that is going to be fast enough and autonomous enough to make quick steps in testing and learning new businesses, but at the same time needs to be deeply connected to their brand, because their brand is one and the storytelling is one. And if you do something, it's not that a brand like Gucci can create a startup, because if you move away from the brand, you lose the relevance. So what we try to do is I have a few core teams that are relatively small and nimble, working on the different streams, really focused. And then we have bridges. So to answer your question on Web3 is a handful of people. And then obviously they are not alone, because they are deeply connected with obviously our brand and client engagement teams when it's relevant. They are deeply connected with our legal team. They are deeply connected with our tech team. And all these areas actually are areas where you need to build the Web3 knowledge, because you don't communicate on a Web3 project the same way you communicate on something else. You don't build a legal agreement with a Web3 partner the same way you do it with a department store. So I would say it's a mix of a small core team, but at the same time, building expertise across the company to create the link and move fast.